What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back. Thanks for being here. As always, before we get started, if you don't already, make sure you come over here and you subscribe to the podcast and there's a little share link. Take that for us and click share. Put that on your Facebook. Put that on your Twitter. That's going to help us grow the podcast. You're going to help us get our numbers up, you know? That's what it's all about on the podcast. Get the numbers up, baby. You got to let people know that what I'm doing isn't being watched by nobody. So you're going to watch it, you're going to take it, you're going to convince somebody else that it's worth watching. That's how we're going to build this thing. I've also got t-shirts for sale. I got hoodies. I got t-shirts. T-shirts, $25. Hoodies, $35. I'm including shipping in that. Can you believe it? You believe it's so cheap. If you want to buy a t-shirt or a hoodie, right now you can email me at myroompodcast@gmail.com and send me your size information, and I'll only collect payments at shipping. So as soon as I get them in the mail, I'll send them to you, and that's what I ask for. So just let me know how many I should get. You know, like if you want a t-shirt, you want a hoodie, let me know the sizes. But I will not sell a small t-shirt or a medium hoodie. It's all above. So, man.
Thanks so much for coming. You know, it's episode 6. Soon, I'm going to take all the solo episodes. The solo episodes will be exclusively on the Patreon, which we should have the Patreon live next week. So keep a lookout for that if you want premium content, exclusive content. And I will continue to do solo episodes, and they'll all be on Patreon only. And then I'm going to have guest episodes. I started booking guests, and I got like the next 3 months already booked up with guests. So every week you're going to be meeting a new person sitting across from me, and I think that's really going to change the style of the podcast. So if any of you are getting sick, like, is this going to change? Is it going to get any better? Is he going to get any better? That's what's going to change, is you'll get to know another person, and that's going to make us all better, baby. That's what we're going to do. So make sure you come back next week. We'll have our first guest. I think it's going to be Matt Taylor. He's a Nashville comedian. If he bails on it now, he's been locked in by the podcast, and he's going to look like an idiot. He's going to look dumb.
Matt Taylor's going to look dumb. Right? That's right.
Whatever. So yeah, guest episodes are coming in hot, baby, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you come back for that and buy a t-shirt, please, so I can start making an income from this. But welcome to episode 6. Thanks for being here. Today, what are we going to talk about? I think today we're going to talk a little about the NBA playoffs, which just got announced. The bubble's finished. We might talk a little bit about the NFL. We might talk a little bit about, we're definitely going to recap UFC 252 with Daniel Cormier and DC. So that's going to, Daniel Cormier and DC. Stipe and Daniel Cormier. So stick around. That's going to be a little later in the podcast if you want to hear a little sports breakdown. But, dude, I don't know what the horrible shit going on today. The college is coming back, which is like insane. Like, did you hear about these Georgia parties? I've got it here on the monitor. If you're just listening on YouTube, I've got there's all these people that went to this Georgia party and they're not wearing masks, which is like, whatever. This isn't the mask podcast, baby. This isn't like I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you about masks. That's not why we're doing this. I'm not going to come on here and go, wear it, you're going to die. That's not what I'm doing. But it is kind of crazy that all these kids have gone back to college campus and they're just like, we're not going to die. Fuck it. Let's fucking chill. Let's fucking party, bro. Let's rush the fraternity, whatever that means. I didn't go to college, so I really wouldn't know. But God, what would you expect out of kids? They all think they're invincible. I mean, I'm it's kind of crazy for me to consider I'm not a college-age kid. I feel pretty young, but college-age kids are like children. That's what I know now. It's like knowing how I feel now. They're like children that think they're adults, or they think soon they will be adults, but they were very wrong. They're not going to be adults for a long time. But all these folks that are over here, it's kind of, I wonder how many people are just like partying. They're just back on campus. Like, who gives a shit? You shouldn't really expect anything less. I mean, look at these people. Look at this. They're all just, granted, they're not in a house, which is nice. It's nice to see them, like, at least social distancing outside, but I'm glad I'm not in college, dude. I don't know. They're all safe, probably. It's not like they're going to die. I mean, they're young people. They probably just expect the COVID cases to go way up with all these Southeast. I mean, what does that mean for college football, though? That's what I'm nervous about. All these kids coming back to school and throwing a party like this is at Georgia. So it's like if they show that the Georgia student population like escalates, goes crazy with COVID-19, it's like, are they going to cancel football for the SEC? Like the southern schools are being the most aggressive about wanting to have the college football season. So is that going to be what like kills it? Is these kids? Also, on the other hand, the college athletes will be held to safer standards, but what if one of them, they're kids, they go out and they go to one of these parties, they come back, they bring it back to the whole team, they fuck everything up? I mean, who knows? I see that being an incredibly likely possibility, because they're also like, these are, if it's their first time in college, like they're for a freshman, they've probably been waiting to be like, imagine an Alabama football player at the university. They're like a rock star. Be like, I'm on the Alabama football team in Tuscaloosa. It's like going to a party. They treat you like a damn king. So, like, one of those kids, they're not going to be able to resist this shit. And somebody's going to fuck up, and they're going to get cut from the team. I see it coming, dude. It's going to happen. But, I mean, who knows if any of the college, the Big Ten came out and said they're not going to have any fall sports championships and fall sports operations. So that means that Big Ten schools are not going to be able to play. And Nebraska came out, and they said that they intended to try to play anyway. And everybody was like, what the fuck you talking about, like the mafia? So, like, the Big Ten is, like, trying to... The NCAA and these conferences are trying to, like, exert power over these schools, but the schools, I guess, they make millions and millions of dollars from football, and a lot of their athletic programs all year round and student programs, like everything from the university, is football income. So, like, they're going to be on hard times at the university. When colleges, colleges steal your money from you, so they're used to making a ton of money and being a business. So if they're going to lose some money, they're like, ain't no way we're losing. But that's why they probably let all these kids back on campus. They're like, hey, we charge all these kids, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, like, we got to be getting that money, baby. We'll open my business up. Everybody talking about open my small business. That's at colleges. They got big business. That's like big pharma money. Not Yale, though. Yale is being smart. All those Ivy Leagues, the Ivy League conference, they canceled the sports first, and they did something with the schools opening back up first. Like, they said that they're not going to do fall sports first, maybe, is what happened. But I don't know, dude. I don't want to make it a big COVID-19. But what else is there to talk about? What else could we talk about? College is back, and they're going to kill us. That's the collegians are going to kill us all. That's what we have to
worry about. We have to worry about that college student athletes are going to get a virus that's going to take us all out. That's what we have to talk about, baby.
That's all there is to talk about anymore. It's just that which young person's going to get us all killed next? Who's going to eat the animal? Who's going to eat a pangolin and get us murdered? What kind of new animal is it could be digested by a person that goes to Georgia University that could ruin all of our lives? What's next? Which one? Could it be like a southern animal, like squirrels? Somebody make a bad batch squirrel gravy. Now there's college zombies everywhere. Could we do that? Jesus Christ, dude. Young people ruin everything. They really do. I was thinking today about, like, my podcast being on YouTube, and I'm trying to get more traction. But, like, every episode I'm talking about, like, Hillary Clinton and the Epsteins. It's like, yeah, good fucking luck getting to the algorithm on that one, bro. The only reason YouTube has changed like that, too, is they just want to market to young people. And they don't want, like, parents to, like, take their kids' iPad from them. That's all it is. They, like, want the parent to feel safe to give the kid the iPad. Because I don't understand how business works. That's why I'm not a businessman, or I'm not a successful businessman right now, is because advertisers make money. They want the kids to be able to see the programming so you can advertise to get everybody, like kids and everybody. But kids don't have money. I don't understand that. Like, what? Why is it always like they want it to be palatable to kids? They want to be advertised to kids. It's like, what kid has income? In a world like it, theologically, you think that wouldn't make any sense? Like, an idea, why would it? Who gives a shit about kids? That's why. I mean, I don't have children, but, like, I'm not buying them stuff they want. That's not what I'm doing. And a kid's not. Who's got the money? The parents have the money. So it's like, if a kid sees an ad, a kid with the iPad, what are they going to tell the parents? I want to go to Home Depot today. There's a sale on mulch at Home Depot. We got to go replace the lattice for the fence. There's a hot spring sale. Let's go to the Home Depot. Your kids, they're it's so stupid. I don't know, man. I mean, that's why Joe Rogan's going to Spotify, is because he does content that, like, gets into my. That's what happens. It's like me and my podcast. I'm cursing and stuff in the beginning of the podcast. If you do that, it kind of cuts you from being seen by the algorithm, or not the 30 seconds. It's like the first 10 minutes or something like that, not cursing. And if you don't, then it helps you get through the algorithm to get to more people's eyes. And Joe Rogan kind of had enough with YouTube censorship bullshit, like what you have to dance around. You can't just make your own content. So, and they'll demonetize you. They'll take away all the ad revenue. Sometimes, like, after you've gotten, you have to pay back. It gets insanity. So, I mean, is YouTube the future podcast platform? I don't know. If they're planning on getting a bunch of advertising dollars from people with no money and small children, then maybe. But I know Spotify is launching their new video podcast segment. So, like, Rogan's podcast, the full video versions are all going to be on Spotify as well as the audio versions and nowhere else. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see what that does to the platform, like, of everybody's podcast, see how many people start going on Spotify, if everybody's just able to, if everybody can do it. It's kind of a smart grab by Spotify if they want to get into the video podcast and also like exclusive podcast listening, because they do the music, but people don't really listen to podcasts that much on Spotify. And if they make that grab for Rogan exclusively, it's like people are going to have to adjust to listen to Rogan exclusively there, and then they'll expect to be able to listen to everybody there. So it's a pretty smart move by Spotify, as long as and then Rogan will probably stop being there exclusively after a couple years, and he'll just be there in addition to. So it'll be fun to see. It'll be fun to see how other rich people with businesses and websites take other people's money. It's gonna be really fun to find out. It's gonna be super fun
to find out. It's gonna be great to see the future of business. It's gonna be, are we all gonna still be alive? Are we gonna make it? Are we gonna be able to eat? Are we gonna have the luxury of being able to sit down and do a podcast? I don't know.
I honestly don't know. But I know that everybody in LA is leaving. That opens it up it makes comedy better all around the country. I know that all these LA comedians are out. They're all going, like Joe Rogan's moving to Austin, Texas. Joey Diaz has stopped doing the Church of What's Happening now. He's moving to New Jersey. Your Mom's House podcast folks, they're talking about moving to Colorado or Florida or something like that, maybe to Texas. The fighter and the rapist guy, they're moving somewhere. I don't know where they're going yet, but they're on Patreon. I know that much. So, hey, Brian Callen, we love you on this podcast. I know that. You're my hero. I got to put up the photo sometime of me and Brian Callen. I might put it up in the post editing here somewhere. But, dude, LA comedy has been huge for me in, like, even though I don't live there, I feel like it's been big for a lot of people over the last couple of years, like what their network has kind of exposed people to. I know I probably wouldn't be doing a podcast right now if it wasn't for those folks kind of creating a thing that, I've always wanted to do something like this, and I didn't really know what it was. I was thinking about this the other day. I've always been, like, a huge fan of the movie Wayne's World, and that's probably the first time I knew I wanted to do, like, that guy had if you never see Wayne's World, he, like, puts on a public access TV show in his house. So, like, he's got the cameras and stuff there, but they just bring, like, a TV truck when he does the show at night, and they broadcast it out to the city of Milwaukee. So I always thought, like, that was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. So when podcasting came along and you can, like, make that shit happen in your own house, I was like, oh, that's the thing that I want to do. So if it wouldn't have been for guys like Rogan and Joey Diaz, I probably would have never found. And it took a long time for me to give podcasts a chance because everybody was, for me, it seemed like NPR. I was like, listen to talk. What am I going to listen to people talk? I never did that. I wasn't like but then I listened to what people would talk about, and I'm like, oh, this is just like being a part of a really cool conversation. It's like getting to sit and listen, people that you can't often get their perspective on things. They're like being uncensored and real to each other, and that kind of laid out like a really fun conversation to listen to. So I kind of fell in love with the podcast medium. So I'm super thankful that, who knows if that ever would have got to me. There's millions of people all over the world, all over this country that don't even give podcasts a chance. They don't even know what they are, so the growth in that platform is like, has so much room and to go, and everybody can do it. So that's what's going to be really interesting to see, like, in 20 years, what's podcasting going to be like? Because podcast has really only caught on to the mainstream in the last, like, 4 years or something like that. So, I'm gonna be seeing what all these guys are doing. Theo Von's moving to Nashville. There are folks moving. Probably more people will move to Nashville because we've got a good little comedy scene going on. And some of the comics we have that have been younger over the past couple of years, they're starting to become real comics. And when that shit gets back, then I think the nature of the way comedy comes back and how they'll book kind of locally because of travel and costs and stuff. Like, a lot of people were bringing their hosts and features in clubs, and I think you might see a little bit of a return of local work, if I could predict. I don't know if I can. Look, if I'm not a gambling man, I don't know. But you might see a lot more local features and hosts because these headliners might not be able to pay to fly their homies out for a while. So that'll be good for people in smaller market towns when people come back touring. That'll be a lot and give a lot of work to them. So I'm excited to see what the future of comedy holds. who's around, who you can network with, who's going to be in your city. If you're involved in comedy at all, like in the club or going to open mics and stuff, it's like it's a lot of everybody kind of sees each other. It becomes like this little club of like everybody's kind of hanging around, sees each other in different places. So that's always fun. We don't have very many famous like big successful guys, and we're probably gonna be getting a few. So that's gonna be interesting to see what kind of local shows can open up, and it's very exciting. So, what else do we want to talk about, dude? The kids can't advertise Home Depot. I know that much. NBA bubble, dude. Can we talk about the playoffs? I don't know. I can't give you any fucking groundbreaking advice on the NBA playoffs, but I do know it's going to be fun to watch because there's nothing else going on. It was hard for me to get into all the bubble stuff because it just didn't feel real. I was like, these guys are hardly playing. Everybody was already locked in. The only thing that was really up for grabs was the 8th seed in the West, which was super interesting to get to watch that. That maybe shows you the implication of how important the playoffs would be, like the intensity, because those 4 teams, it was Portland and Memphis, the Phoenix Suns, and Portland, Phoenix, Memphis, and San Antonio. Show me San Antonio. No, but it was so cool to see those teams. They weren't playing each other, but they were playing to get in because they were all tied. So it's like if this team wins, but this team loses, but then they're all out. The Suns end up going 8-0, undefeated in the bubble, and they don't get in because Damian Lillard goes on a heater, and in the last 3 games he scored over 150 points. So like he went for 61 and then like 52 and 42. I don't know what the math is on that. It's probably wrong, but he went for like crazy points. Yeah, I think it was 61, 50, and 42. If that's right. But they're gonna get they're playing the Lakers in the first round. If you can see in the top corner of your screen, it's gonna be Portland versus the Lakers, and the Lakers are a good defensive team with size down low. Like they don't really play good defense from the perimeter to the hoop. So you got like guys like CJ McCollum, you got Damian Lillard and Carmelo Anthony, all real stretch shooter players that can drive the hoop. I mean, Carmelo's not going to do a whole lot of driving, but he's going to play with size down low. He can play in that area. So you could, if those guys get hot, dude, you might see Portland take out the Lakers in the first round, which would be so crazy for LeBron in this point in his career to finally get AD and to get all these other good players around him. He had the Lakers make a crazy trade to get AD, and he still kept Kuzma, and they got they got Quinn Cook, they got Rondo, they got all kinds of players. They did horribly in the bubble. They got Danny Green as a good jump shooter. They, Rondo dishing great assists and stuff, but they're not a crazy jump shooting team. They got a little firepower behind the perimeter, but not like the Trailblazers. And it being a 3-point shooting league, like the scores, if you saw the scores of those Portland games, yes, they also let you run the score up a little bit, but the way the Lakers can score versus how Portland can score, the efficiency, Portland's efficiency is so high, and the Lakers have to work a lot harder. LeBron dribbles into his shots. He always has to do a lot of work. They got to work the ball into Anthony Davis. I mean, they're the number 1 team in the West. They didn't do great in the bubble, and I mean, I don't know. If you're a betting person, I mean, you never really pick the 8 over the 1 in the West for sure. But the heat of these guys have been on, and they're not. That's the important thing I think people aren't taking into consideration. They're not changing in playing environments. So it's not like a normal playoffs where it's going to be like now they're in Portland, now they're in LA. They're going to go right back to the same court they've been playing on. And Damian Lillard being in that gym for every single game shooting like this is going to be crazy. Him getting comfortable. There's going to be no intensity of the fans. It's just going to be the intensity of playing at like a pickup game in a gym, and you get to go like hard. You're a professional athlete, one of the best in the world, and you get to go at other folks without having to deal with the emotions and the pressure of the fans and the noise and you think about what it is to like get into a game for a playoff situation. Like, think you got to go on a bus and there's security, there's fans everywhere. You got to go under a state. You got to get out with your stuff, and there's all that. But now it's just there's nobody. They've been dealing with this for weeks. It's the same thing they've already been doing in the bubble, and now they're just going to be doing it again. So Lillard is probably going to throw the fuck down, dude. I wouldn't be surprised. It would shock me. I mean, it's only going to go one or another way, but Damian Lillard could go deep in these playoffs. They got a hard road in the West no matter who they play. I mean, they got to beat the Lakers in the first round. Then they'd have to take the winner of the Thunder and the Rockets. If the Thunder edge the Rockets by any chance, I think Portland can take the Thunder easy, but the Rockets are pretty tough to take right after the Lakers because they can match the jump shooting and the matchup for these guards. Even Carmelo Anthony will have to deal with James Harden, and that after fighting to get into the bubble, fighting the Lakers to get in, to make it to the second round, that's going to be a lot to deal with. But if they can, I don't know, man. And then they'll have to play probably the Clippers because you got to think at this point the Clippers will take the Mavericks, Nuggets will beat the Jazz, and then Clippers probably beat the Nuggets. So you're probably looking at Lakers Clippers in the Western Conference Final, or I would say Portland Clippers. And that might line it up easy. That would be a huge accomplishment for the Portland Trailblazers to make it to the conference finals after all this. And they're dealing with a little bit of injuries, I think. Nurkic is going to be instrumental for them, especially if they make it past the first round and they play the Thunder or the Rockets. Because those are such the Rockets are such a spread out team. And if I still think I know anything about the Thunder, they still have Steven Adams. They're pretty hard in the middle. So they're really going to need Nurkic to have show-out performances as well as these three guys that can shoot, stay hot. And if they can, dude, they're world beaters. Damian Lillard was taking it. They go point. That's how Damian Lillard plays basketball, though. It's not like you're not going to see the Portland Trailblazers blow out a lot of teams, but they get you to this point where you're going possession to possession, and they run that clock so well if they get the last possession, Damian Lillard shut the lights out on you. So, God, the playoffs are going to be so hot just talking about it. The West is so much more exciting than the East. Nuggets Jazz, I feel bad for that matchup because it's just nobody really gives a shit. Thank God the people aren't talking about the Jazz and how they brought the world of sports down with COVID-19. I think that's an interesting storyline that no one's picking up on, that Rudy Gobert ruined the planet. But in Clippers Mavericks, it's like Luka Doncic, but it's really this Lakers Portland matchup is so big that I think it's going to eclipse every other match in the entire playoffs. The sleeper in the East that I think is going to be really interesting is the Heat. They've been really good. I think they're the fifth seed. They're the fourth or the fifth seed in the league. I don't know. I don't have the numbers on the thing I'm looking at, but they're playing the Pacers, another good young team that I think they'll beat because they got Jimmy Butler has been playing out of his mind, Tyler Hero, and their young core. They got all these young guys like people in their sophomore and junior seasons. And Bam Adebayo, they got Tyler Hero. Kendrick Nunn might be Rookie of the Year because Ja Morant didn't make the playoffs, and the New Orleans didn't make the playoffs. So Kendrick Nunn is the only Rookie of the Year finalist that made it to the playoffs. And depending on his performance and when they hand out those awards, which I think should be on the conference final weekend, is when they hand out MVP and all that stuff. So who knows? Kendrick Nunn, the Heat don't. That's the thing about those teams. Like New Orleans and Memphis, they need Ja Morant and Zion Williamson to have a great game for them to be successful. They're superstars on their teams. And Kendrick Nunn isn't that instrumental to the team's success on his own, which is super impressive that he's gotten himself into the conversation for Rookie of the Year. And they have Jimmy Butler. They have Tyler Heroes having a crazy breakout season. Bam Adebayo made the All-Star team, and he might be Most Improved Player of the Year. They have some crazy talent on that team, and they're young and probably going to be around for a while. Jimmy Butler has tested out how it works for him. He's played for the Bulls. He's played for the 76ers. Now he's on the Heat. He's kind of toured. He played for the Timberwolves. He's seen how it works out for him playing with other coaches, playing with other players. And if he meshes with all these young guys, why would he move to a different team? Why would he go anywhere else? Especially he loves it. Like Tyler Hero, they have such a funny relationship. He talks to Tyler Hero, thinks he's black. He makes fun of him all the time. He's like, this kid doesn't know he's white. I swear to God. He's just a fucking crazy, fashionable white kid. He's shooting the lights out of the gym. He's like Jimmy Butler's best friend. So if you got that kind of biracial unity on that team, I don't think you're going to break that up anytime soon. Plus Miami weather. It's like he's in I'm sure he's loving life. So for the duration, as long as Miami can pay these guys and they have them on 4 or 5 year rookie contracts, come on, dude. They'll probably sign extensions with these guys to keep them around unless they start taking titles. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Heat go to the Eastern Conference Finals and go to the title game. They're looking at the Bucks in the second round. Granted, if the Bucks get through the Magic, which I think they will, the Magic is technically playing at home. It's got to be so crazy to be the Orlando Magic and you're playing basketball like that, technically at home, you're so close to your house you can't leave. Like, you have to go into a quarantine bubble zone miles from where you live. It's so funny to me. So maybe they're feeling comfortable or antsy. Like, some of these guys are they live in Canada. Some of these guys, they live in the coast of California. They're all the way across the country. So I don't know. I would be curious to hear, like, the psychology or what that's like for the Magic players. And, I mean, who cares, honestly, if they get sent home early? Their car is in the parking lot. They're driving home from the bubble. They have probably a butler like, hey, my car's been sitting there for 3 weeks. We just go driving around the parking lot and make sure it's not going to, like, the oil doesn't get old. Or I don't know what happens with cars. But, you know. So the East just isn't that exciting. I mean, the Bucks are great, and that's mostly why it's not exciting. You think the Celtics are good. But who cares? They don't have they are young guys, but no crazy superstar seasons on the Celtics. The Sixers are exciting. The Celtics-Sixers matchup is exciting. But Ben Simmons is injured. Who knows if he's going to be back before the playoffs begin? I don't think he's going to be. I think he had to have surgery on his wrist or his ankle or something. And the Sixers just don't have that all-star that you're looking for to watch. The Nets versus Raptors. Nets are super good young team. That Laurent guy that plays for the Nets is cold. That guy, they went against Portland in the game that Portland needed to win to make the playoffs or make the play-in to play Memphis. And they made that game so dramatic coming down the stretch. I mean, Damian Lillard really had to go at it against that guy, like, shot for shot. And the Nets, when they get KD and Kyrie, if they can keep the chemistry of those guys, that they work hard and they can jump shoot. That Nets team without KD and Kyrie, they can shoot the lights out of the gym. And then when Kyrie is back on the floor, hopefully he meshes well with all these guys and he's able to dish, to all these shooters. I mean, because Kyrie kind of brings that threat of you having to guard in the middle. He's a magician with his handles. So, man, the Nets are looking good after this season for sure. Jared Allen is such a defensive force, and he's just like a classic big man that doesn't need, like, when you started looking at guys like Shaq and Elijah Wan that started changing the game, they were like guys that can really shake it up and score. And even back to like Kareem. Kareem was such a big scorer. Like the big man that's just a presence is not so beloved anymore. And Jared Allen's just a fucking huge guy with a giant afro that's blocking your shots, and you love to see that shit. So, and that's going to be such a valuable role player to have specifically on the Nets once you get KD and Kyrie back. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Jared Allen's points go through the roof, like his average go up by a huge jump that season, because think about how the Rockets use Clint Capella a lot in those playoff series, where he gets so many points off like a dink and dump where they leave him on a pick and roll or something to double Harden, and he gets the ball and just a slam dunk. I mean, Jared Allen's going to have those all day with KD and Kyrie working in the thing. I can imagine like a three-man ball where he's dumping off and defenses just have to make a decision where all game long, are you going to let KD shoot over you? Or are you going to jump to this, let Kyrie get the layup? Or are you going to just leave Jared Allen open? And I think that kind of decision-making, that option for the Nets is going to be really, really important. And that's going to make them really successful in an Eastern Conference that, like, on an off year where people, the prospects of the draft this year are probably not going to change the game very much from this year. So you're going to look at a lot of retention. I don't know what the free agency looks like, but I bet it's not a crazy free agency year. And I bet given what's going on, guys might sign extensions and one-year deals for the teams they're already at in the situations they're comfortable with. So it's probably going to be a good year for teams on business, because guys aren't going to be looking to take risks and move their families and further complicate their lives after it's already been kind of crazy. Or who knows? You might see like guys be like, fuck it, I want to go to a place where I finally wanted to be. You'd probably see a mix. So, there's no guarantees with that. But the Eastern Conference is so boring until probably the conference finals. I mean, I'm sure the Heat versus the Bucks, hopefully, is what you get in the second round. And I would love to see the Nets go to the conference finals without KD and Kyrie. Like, that would be so fun for me to see a young Nets that's like hard-nosed and hard-working, great jump shooters play against the Heat, and then the Heat make the finals. Giannis, I'm a big Giannis Antetokounmpo fan, but it just doesn't strike me as their year to like make it far in the playoffs. I just don't see it. I don't see them killing it. I don't see, also I hate fucking Pat Connaughton. That guy played for Notre Dame, and he's become a pretty athletic role player, like an influential person on the Bucks team, and I don't enjoy it at all. So I would root for that guy's demise. He's just a white Irish guy that has no business being successful in the NBA basketball. It doesn't. There's so many other guys he played against at Kentucky that haven't been successful. It hurts me that he is a hardworking guy that's been able to get success. So fuck that guy, and I wish him nothing but the worst. So Pat Connaughton, forget you, dude. I don't know. So that's really all I can say about the NBA. I wasn't so into watching the game. I'll tell you this. I played a ton of 2K. I won a title, and I'm on my way to a second. I've got 4 losses in the season. I think I got 64 wins. So, I mean, there's nobody that's killing it like me in the NBA ever in real life. I'm having the best season that anyone's ever had. My player, Lonzo Tron, he's a 3 guard. He's got pink hair and a blonde beard. He plays for the Nuggets, and we just been crushing motherfuckers all season long. So, well, stay tuned. Come back in a couple weeks. We'll see if I see what my title. Given that I can just turn off the Xbox if I'm losing, I don't see myself not winning the title. So you can probably come back for a guaranteed championship. But what else do I got going on? I mean, the fights were super fun this weekend. We had Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic. But the fight I want to talk about first, I'm going to talk about Sean O'Malley and Chito Vera. This was a super bummer, dude, to see Sean O'Malley take a loss like this. Sean O'Malley, if you're unfamiliar, he's the guy on the left of your screen. He's got the braids. He is a super breakout star in the UFC right now. And he's undefeated. He's a kid from Montana, super electric personality. You love to root for the guy. And he's got an interesting style, and he's always knocking guys out in the first round. I mean, an overwhelming amount of his fights have been won in the first round. I don't know if I've seen him go to a decision. I saw him hurt his foot. He broke his foot, had that Liz Frank injury, and he finished the guy by submission. The guy didn't really catch on that he was injured and just kind of like blew it. Like what would have happened really is if the guy would have Sean went to the ground and then his opponent jumped on him, and if the opponent would have just backed off, realized he was injured and backed off, didn't let his adrenaline take over, Sean wouldn't have been able to stand up to continue, and the referee would have stopped the fight. So in this fight, I mean, in the first round, you can't tell you can kind of see the blue over top, but Sean dyed his hair the colors of the Ecuadorian flag, which is where Chito is from. Now, Chito's got a great personality, too, and you love that guy. I didn't want to root against him for sure, and I had a friend that picked, Chito was the biggest underdog, I think, on the card, because people are riding O'Malley hard. They think he's like the next McGregor, and I love him, too. I thought so, and I still think so. But he talked a lot of shit to Vera, and Chito really has been lining up his career to this point where to make him so much of an underdog right now, his career is really coming together where he might be breaking out as like a champion level contender. And that kind of was exposed to me in the walkouts. When I saw Chito walk out first and then I saw O'Malley walk out, I was looking at it, I was like, my friend that had picked Chito Vera, I was like, I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, man, that guy might have made a good pick. Because you could just tell by their body language. Like, everybody's pumping O'Malley. Nobody's talking about Chito. So all the pressure's off, and he's just got to go in there. He's, like, spiteful, looking for a fight, ready to kick this guy's ass. And he went in there. A lot of people, Sean, if you don't know, the fight ended in an injury. It looked like Sean O'Malley broke his foot or something. And it was attributed to that Sean O'Malley got an injury, and Chito was just able to get on top of him. And Sean was distracted by his injury. Chito lands a couple elbows through the guard, hurt him bad, and the referee put a stop to the fight. Now, I'm glad the referee stopped the fight. A lot of questions about an early stoppage, but it was obvious to everybody watching the fight, the opponent, the corners, the people at home, the referee. Everybody knew that O'Malley's incapacitated, and it was early in the first round. It didn't seem possible that O'Malley would get back into the fight, and why let a guy take damage when he's like not going to be able to stand up and continue? So it was a great stoppage by Herb Dean. But a lot of people complained about it and chalked it up to just the injury is why O'Malley lost. But if you rewatch the fight and look at it, Chito Vera hits him with a calf kick. And if you've ever been hit with one of those, which I have not, but everybody says that if you get hit with that, it kind of fucks up the way that you can work on that leg. So they say that O'Malley got hit with that calf kick. That's what all the pros say. And then it was probably hard for him to step on his foot the way he likes to jump around, be light on his toes. And he misstepped, and it made him have a high ankle sprain, and it ruined him for the rest of the fight. So Chito, it wasn't just like a freak injury. It's an injury that Chito caused. And if you're going to enter into a fight, you're gonna get hurt. It's not like you're going to go into a fight and there's not going to, and it was the story in the main event. Like DC, if you watch the fight, was sometime in the third round maybe. He was hit with a horrible eye poke at the end of the round, and the referee missed it. Now, I'm glad that I looked up a lot of stuff about this, and I thought about it a lot after the fight. It's interesting. Let me pull up this other picture here. It's interesting that the referee missed the eye poke, right? Because in the fight, as it happened, it's close to the end of the round, and DC had been getting beaten pretty badly, and he complained to the ref about it. DC had eye poked Stipe earlier, and the ref just kind of discounted it. He was like, you got punched, continue to fight. And then even at the end of the round, as DC contested to him that he was eye poked, he was like, no, you got punched, just go to your corner. And in the replay, everybody sees that it's an eye poke. In that moment, if they see it's an eye poke and the referee stops the fight, to have the doctor come in and look at the eye, right? Because if you look at DC's eye, if they had stopped the fight, you would have looked at it and been like, his eye's all crooked, like going into his head and stuff, like back in it. He looked horrible. And he said in his corner that he couldn't see at all. So if they had stopped the fight, and even by mistake DC said that he couldn't see out of his eye, the doctor would have stopped the fight immediately, and the DC would have lost. I don't know how that would have gone. If they stop it via eye poke, does DC win by disqualification and the title goes to DC? He doesn't want to go out like that. That would have made the trilogy horrible. If the trilogy was stopped on a DQ and DC wins the title off an eye poke from Stipe, that would have been a horrible way to end the fight. So it's probably best case scenario, given the eye poke, that the fight was allowed to continue. Not good for DC. He's out there. He took a lot of those right hands over the top because, he couldn't see on his left side. So it sucks to see DC being a champion the way he is. And he was a champion in the UFC because of the John Jones issues and the disqualification. He became champ because the belt was vacated by John, and DC won it in a fight against Alexander Gustafsson. And then he fought John to defend the title. John beats him, but ends up having to vacate because he tested hot for steroids. That made the fight a no contest and allowed DC to regain the title after he lost it. So he lost in a title fight to beat Jones. I think that's how it went. I think that the first fight was that John was the champ and DC lost. And then DC became the champ because John was out, and then lost to John, and John beat DC for the belt, but then he got the belt back. And then I think DC, when he moved up to heavyweight, he kept the light heavyweight title for a while, and then he beat Stipe and became the double champ. And then after he fought Derek Lewis and retained the heavyweight title, being champ, then he relinquished the light heavyweight title, and John Jones fought, I can't remember who he fought. It might have been Alex Smith. He fought for the vacated light heavyweight belt. So, that's kind of really complicated how all that happened. But so that's DC's championship career, is that all that mess, that web with John Jones. It's like DC is forever tied to John Jones because of that, the mess of losing and getting it and the drug and then getting it back because of this. So it's all this huge mess. So it's hard to say that DC was ever the champ because John only had issues over social things or issues that were cleared up with USADA that were attributed to not even being his fault with performance-enhancing drugs. So it's something like you can discredit his losses because he was on something. It was proven that he wasn't. And people speculate that, I only think, just to have the conversation that DC was and I love DC, great champion. He deserves to be a champion. Any other era, he is the greatest light heavyweight ever, or just if there's no John Jones. And then you got to look at, so he's only got losses to John Jones, technically one, but the no contest, 2 losses, and he's got 2 losses to Stipe. So he only had 2 fights with John, lost them both. He had a trilogy with Stipe. At least he knocked him out once, but he lost the latter 2 fights. So he doesn't finish his career as a champion in light heavyweight. He doesn't finish his career as a champion in heavyweight, and he had 2 different guys in 2 different divisions. They were able to get the best of him 2 different times. All for title fights, and he's had 10 consecutive title fights in the UFC, which is insane to think about. 10 consecutive title fights, and he only legitimately won the title. Well, I guess he legitimately won the title when he beat Gustafsson, for sure, because he had lost to Jones, but the title was vacant. So he beat Jones, and then he defended against Ozdemir. He defended against guys. So, it's not like he's not a champ. He's definitely the champion. But it just sucks for him. Like, I think about how I am, how I think about things. I'd be so hard for me to let that lie. That, like, I was like, I don't know. Also, it's like, how many fucking other guys have careers that don't mean anything? Like, I mean, he's able to go to bed at night being a 2-time Olympian, being a heavyweight champion, being a light heavyweight champion in the UFC, being a champion in Strikeforce, winning the Strikeforce Grand Prix as a replacement, coming in and just cleaning house and never fighting MMA before, and being a champion and a heavyweight champion. And you look at DC in this picture here, he's quite a bit shorter than these heavyweight contenders, and he was in the conversation to be the greatest heavyweight of all time in not only in any like division of MMA, but then he's also was considered being one of the greatest combat sports athletes with his wrestling pedigree. So it sucks to see him go out like that on an injury. He couldn't finish the fight. Who knows how that could have gone if he wasn't injured, if he could see better, if he could have taken risks to get on the inside more, and maybe he's knocking out Stipe. But it didn't show any evidence. Like, he didn't really have that many hot moments except when he stole the first round by knocking Stipe down. I think he hit him with a good shot. And I don't know if it was an official knockdown, but he definitely landed one of the better shots early in the fight. So, damn, dude. I mean, it really sucks. It really sucks to see DC go out like this, but he's going to be a great commentator. He's going to be with us for many more years. And I'm talking about him like he's dead already or something. But it sucks to see DC go out that way. But now it's exciting to see what's going on with Jon Jones in the heavyweight division. Today, all this news broke about, Jon Jones he had a meeting with the UFC early in the day, and he's vacating the light heavyweight title. I mean, he came out and had a big tweet storm where at first he was going, I'm not really talking to the UFC very much, and we've never had negotiations for my pay. It's always just been them telling me what's going on. So I'm going to vacate the belt and just be a fan until whatever. And then a couple hours later, he's like, I just had a great conversation with the UFC to be moving up to heavyweight, and I'm going to start training and I'm going to get a fight at heavyweight, and they're giving me money and a contract that I'm interested in. And I had a great, honest talk with them. So now he's talking. The next thing that comes for Jon Jones, I see he's either going to fight Ngannou or he's going to fight Stipe. And given that Stipe just went through a fight, and if Ngannou wants the fight, he'll take it. It depends what Ngannou says, because Dana White came out in the press conference, and this isn't written in the contract, so it doesn't really mean anything. But Dana White came right out and said, he's like, Ngannou deserves to fight. Nobody can jump Ngannou. Like, that's the way it's going to go. So what that says to me, I, of course, am only guessing. But if Jon Jones said he had a good, honest conversation with the UFC, I assume that means they're giving him a title fight or a contender fight, which would only mean Ngannou or Stipe. And that means that they would be skipping Ngannou for the title. Either way, like, even if Ngannou gets the Jones fight, which isn't a huge money fight, I mean, it's a great fight, but I think about the implications of that. What if Jones loses to Ngannou, and then you got, like, he vacated in the light heavyweight division, and now he's got a loss. So I don't see Jones coming up to heavyweight unless he's going right for the title. I just don't see it happening. But, dude, that Ngannou-Jones fight would be a motherfucker. That would be such a good fight. So scary. Because the implication, you don't know what's going to happen. John's never been at heavyweight. And he's fighting the killer of killers. He's going to fight a guy and then to see how that would open up so much about the drama for the Stipe fight, to see how Jon Jones handles himself with Ngannou. What if he stops him? What if he takes him down and, hurts him? And then what if he gets knocked out? I mean, that would make Ngannou such a killer for Stipe and escalate that, because if Ngannou's able to go in there against a smart guy like Jon Jones and win a victory, it means like that he's going to be ready for DC, because anything DC can throw at him now, he's going to be ready, and he's going to be throwing those power shots that DC avoided, or that Stipe, I keep saying DC, that Stipe avoided last time. Get this fucking picture of DC off my screen. Nah, man, but he said that he's taken a fight that he really likes, that the money looks good. So what that means for Jon Jones is really exciting. He's going to be looking big, and he's going to be strong. He's going to be agile. You're probably never ever going to see a heavyweight that's fast and moving around with the kind of striking and the movement that Jon Jones is going to have. It's going to be so interesting to see. And it's kind of crazy that DC is going to be out. It makes me think that DC he'll get back. I think he'll fight John Jones again. I think DC will wait around. He'll let his eye heal. He'll let John. Hopefully, this is in my world. This is what I'd love to see. I'd love to see Jones and Ngannou, and then Jones wins and he fights Stipe, and then he beats Stipe, and then Cormier challenges him for the title. Or maybe you do a Stipe Jones 2. Or you do Ngannou Stipe, and then you do a John Stipe 2 or a John Ngannou 2. I mean, that makes the heavyweight division so exciting for the next couple years if John moves up, because that's got so many more names that you recognize and matchups that you're interested in compared to like what John has in the light heavyweight division, because he just got Reyes. Jones Reyes 2 is the only thing that I'm really getting. Blachowicz, like, giving him his shot, but does anybody think Blachowicz is going to beat John Jones? No. I feel bad for him that he's like sitting, lying and waiting for this thing to get over so he can get his title shot. Because, in any other organization, in any other division in the UFC, it's like Blachowicz is getting his title shot. The way he knocked out Corey Anderson and just his rise in the UFC, the guys Corey Anderson beat to get where he was, I mean, that just made him a really, really clear title contender. So you're probably going to end up seeing Blachowicz Reyes for the vacant title, which honestly for both of them is probably the best thing that can happen because they don't want to run into Jones again because it's probably not going to work out for him. John has been making it, he's been fighting like a real champion, like a Floyd Mayweather would fight, where he just disrupts your action. He doesn't let you get set up, and he's really good at recognizing what your rhythm's going to be just to get started. And he never just lets you get like, all right, I'm going to breathe and grab and right as you're like regrouping, he sees you mentally. He's like a really good like girlfriend where he can see exactly what's going on with you, and then he just fucking shits all over you. He stomps on your fucking knees and makes it hard for you to move forward or whatever you're gonna do. He just disrupts your motion. So I just he's not gonna lose to another light heavyweight anytime. I think if Gustafsson couldn't beat him and DC couldn't beat him, I don't think he ever loses at light heavyweight. And I think he'd fight until he knows it's time to hang it up, and he'd retire before he can lose. It's like heavyweight is really the only division that inspires like, it's a whole new level of power that John is going to have to deal with, a whole new level of threat and with his movement and what he has taken in the past. Reyes hit him with some real shots. I think Anthony Smith got him one or two times. He just in Thiago Santos. Thiago Santos gave Jones a very tough fight. So if any of those guys are in the lights out with one shot in the heavyweight division, it's so crazy to watch those fights because you just never know when it's going to be over. Any moment, like Jairzinho Rozenstruik when he fought Junior Dos Santos this weekend, it was just looking competitive, and Rozenstruik fought a smart, safe fight with his distance, and he just put Dos Santos out, and it just happens like that, second round knockout. So I'm so interested to see John Jones in the heavyweight division. Light heavyweight used to be so full of like celebrity UFC guys, like guys that hallmark guys that are on like the Mount Rushmore. You had Rashad Evans, Tito Ortiz. That was like the division. That's where you had Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonner. You had Anderson Silva move up to that division at one point. Tito Ortiz, Wanderlei Silva, Keith Jardine, Rampage Jackson, Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida. You had all these, the most recognizable guys in the division or in the UFC for a long time were in that division. And now it sucks to see it hollowed out because those are the guys that are like a real man's size. Like that's like a guy is like 6 foot. A guy in the light heavyweight division, he's like a 6'2", 205-pound guy. That's like when you watch him fight in the ring, that's like a real normal-sized, bigger person. And so that's like in the heavyweight division, they're not quick. So light heavyweight was just like big, real guys fighting that still had the speed, and they had an athletic ability that wasn't boring to watch. But now that's really moved down to like the 155-pound division. That's really the division now that everybody is kind of taking on those attributes, and so many people with their, a guy my size, or even guys that there are probably guys that used to fight in the light heavyweight division that now would be forced to fight 155. That's really been the new like every man's division, the most exciting one to watch, the guys with the most impact on the sport or in those areas. So, I'm so excited for the future of the UFC, especially seeing how the COVID thing clears up. And Khabib Gaethje has been locked down for, I think, October 18th. That fight's going to be amazing. Khabib came out and did an interview about his father passing away, and he he kind of called the shot for the next contenders. He said, I'm either taking the GSP fight. If I beat Gagey, taking GSP fight. But if I can't get GSP, I want either Tony or Connor to fight Poirier, and then I'll fight the winner of that fight. He said, because Poirier fought me, he came back, and he beat another top 5 guy in tremendous fashion in a Fight of the Year candidate. I would be so surprised if either, given like the woke nature of the times, and it is probably the best fight of the year, Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk, it's hardly ever you get like a real standout female fight for Fight of the Year, and that fight was so good. So I think it's probably a lock for Fight of the Year, but it's definitely a finalist. Any other year, any other time, Poirier versus Hooker is Fight of the Year. Such a good fight. But you got Costa and Adesanya was finalized. That's going to be a war for sure because of the way Borrachina fights. Paulo Costa is a young guy, undefeated. Israel Adesanya, he's not that young. He seems young, and he's new for the UFC fans, but he's a really decorated striker, kickboxer, and he's a great counter fighter. And Paulo Costa is just a rush blitz, putting it on you. He's a durable guy, and he's incredibly strong. And on the day of the fight, he's so much bigger than 185 pounds. I mean, that guy is a giant. He's so muscular, man. I mean, and for a guy that is as muscular as he is, he has an incredible cardio, like gas tank, so he can go with, we saw him fight Romero for 3 rounds, like nose to nose. We'll see if it has to, we know Adesanya can go 5 rounds. He fought a Fight of the Year against Kelvin Gastelum, so that Adesanya has that ability in him and the power. We see Adesanya, we saw him fight Romero, but it wasn't much of a fight. Romero didn't make it a fight at all. And we saw Paulo Costa fight Romero, and it was like, it could have been Fight of the Year. It was one of my favorite fights I've ever watched, but a lot of people thought Romero won. I thought Paulo Costa won, but a lot of people thought Romero won. But you saw how durable and what he can do, and to see him try to do that against, Romero is so scary, and he threw caution into the wind and fought him and beat him. And again, Romero's so scary. Adesanya fought Romero, didn't throw caution in the wind. Boringest fight I've ever seen in my life. So, most boring, grammar people. So I just don't know how that fight will go, because I know that Paulo Costa is going to be aggressive. And if somebody's really, really aggressive, Adesanya's going to have a lot of opportunities to counter strike and move backwards. But if he gets caught and gets his lights put out, that's going to be crazy for Adesanya to be, the more undefeated, the further you go undefeated, it's the crazier it's going to be if you lose, and especially if you get knocked out. If you're an undefeated that gets knocked out, you hardly ever see that, where it's like a title's on the line or something important, like an undefeated guy gets finished like that. That's why it was hard to see O'Malley lose the way he lost. But either way, you never get 2 undefeateds fighting in a fight, and one of those guys is going to lose, and I don't see Adesanya knocking Costa out. If the fight wins, I think Adesanya will win a decision. But, there's a high probability chance that Adesanya gets knocked out. He's been knocked out before in kickboxing, so that's what makes me nervous. He's had his lights put out, and that guy is just so crazy. But his striking, I don't think his striking is going to be good. He's going to have to rely on his striking. He's not going to be able to he's a great jiu-jitsu practitioner. I don't think he's going to beat Adesanya on the ground, and I don't think he's going to try to take it to the ground. But Adesanya's striking is so good. Maybe that's why you saw such a war with Romero and Costa, is because Romero's striking isn't that crazy, and Costa just came right at him. If you come right at Adesanya that way, he's going to piece you up, and he's going to hit you with strikes that over the duration of the fight, you saw a lot of huge strikes in the Romero-Costa fight, but he's going to hit you with the kind of shots that over a period of a fight are just they're going to cut you, they're going to stop you, they're going to kill your cardio, and you're not going to be able to continue. So I think that's the kind of striker Adesanya is. And we'll see, we'll find out here shortly. They finalize the fight. So I don't know if it's the next title fight or if it's the one. I don't know if Gagey is first or if Adesanya is first, but it's one of those. That's the next 2 pay-per-views. It's going to be a lot of interesting fights coming up, baby. But, we want to thank everybody for coming
by the podcast. Thanks, everyone, for being here. It's episode 6. It was another good time. And remember, after this, it's going to be almost all guest episodes. You might see the occasional solo episode on YouTube, but they're all going to be on Patreon. And so make sure you come back next week. We'll have the link for the Patreon. You can subscribe to that. I don't know, it'll cost like some amount of money a month to get the premium content, but that's going to be okay. You love me, and that's how we're going to make money. Another way we're going to make money, I'm selling merchandise. If you want to buy a t-shirt for the podcast, make sure you email me at myroompodcast@gmail.com and email me your size. I will not do a small t-shirt. I will not do a medium hoodie. Don't even ask. It's medium through extra large t-shirts and large through extra large hoodies. So if you want one of those, email me. We can pay for it. It's shipping only. You don't have to do it now. I just want to get a number for how many I should order. So thanks for being here. Make sure you subscribe and share the episode and give me a little bit of money. And come back next week, episode 7. My name's David Chastain. Thanks for coming to my room. I'm out.